Alright, and welcome back. And I've just gotta say, it's really freaking hot in this room without fans going. Alright. And, as you can see, back to the research. I set my slider back, so I'm gonna get 100,000 credits a turn, and one thing I like about the Lear, they have pretty good research rates. Now, we're just about done with the first turn, one last thing left to do. And that is to go design ships. The reason why is anything that you build or design on the first turn doesn't, have to be prototyped. And since you can retrofit without prototyping, and prototyping is expensive, it's not a bad idea. Now, basically, you want to build something that you're going to keep using and use the same types of. So, I generally try to keep along with similar themes. Basically, you got heavy weapons. I'm just going to put, particle beam. On the side, plasma, medium slot. Since the Lear are basically energy-based, I'm going to actually go with the plasma cannon instead of the mash driver. The mash driver is kind of cool, throws them around. Missiles, very long range, not the greatest in terms of damage. And they'll upgrade automatically as you get techs. But for this, I'm just going to go with the plasma cannon. By the way, if you left-click, it changes one. If you right-click, it'll change all of that slot. And actually, I forgot something. I'm going to actually change a hammerhead because the Lear turn on a dime, and I'm actually very fond of that effect. Now, since this is actually going to be a defensive type, I'm actually going to do the polysilicate alloy to increase, the armor bars, which I'll show you those in a minute. But the Lear do happen to have some of the weaker ships. More plasma cannons. And you can see over here you have the supply, energy, and crew. The supply is how much, food and bullets it has. The energy is, well, exactly what it sounds like. And the crew is also, the Lear have, very low crew requirements, since basically there's just one or two of the guys in a single system. The endurance is something, deals a lot with the fleet, determines how far, the fleet will go as a whole. And the endurance is averaged out between all the ships that are in the fleet. The Hivers, while they focus on ballistics, have insane supply caps, and so they can go quite a ways without a problem. And I'm going to go with lasers, because who doesn't like lasers? Now, starting out, you might get one or two options back here, for the engine. You have tons of options for the, mission section, which determines what the ship's designed for. And you have, starting out with generally two different options for the command, which, for the most part, gives the turning. It can do other extra things. The hammerhead just turns really, really well. The shields, cloaks, disruptors, and all those that go there as well. By the way, these things here are modules. They can do different things. For instance, I could put a Camel Module on, which basically increases the supply. Back here, same thing. Each, section, each ship will have different options. Back here, I can actually put an extra, engine on. They give me more energy, but I really don't need it for this ship. Down here you have options of weapons. This box here determines what it'll target. Whether, Leviathans, Dreadnoughts, Cruisers, Point Defense, or anything available. It will actually shoot at other things, but it'll try to focus on that particular. By the way, you can right-click, opens up a full list so you can see it, and it scrolls off as soon as you mouse get away from it. You can do that for each weapon, type separately. Very nice feature. Here, determines how you want to use it, in combat. This is just the fire at will. It's the default. Basically, it'll shoot as it has targets. Here is something where I'll focus all of that type on one target as much as it can. And then you have Ripple, which actually just try to keep the fire rate up by, staggering its shots. Then you have Spread Fire, shoot everything. To be honest, I don't play around with these too much other than one, which would be this one, and that's an Alpha Strike. If those of you don't know, Alpha Strike is basically just, set up to fire everything you have all at once to try to overwhelm the enemy. I find it rather useful for missile boats to set it for Alpha Strike. That way it waits until they're all loaded and then it just unloads all the missiles. And if you can get your fleet to time it all correctly, and by the way, this is just ship, not fleet, If you get your fleet to time it correctly, you can get a lot of missiles over one point defense quite easily. Then you have Don't Fire. I am not entirely certain why you do this, except in the case if you want to do something special to a planet, like, biological warfare. And then back to default. Again, you can right click and it opens up that menu. Here, that just shows you the weapon type. And this little star has a lot of confusion behind it. Basically what this star means is that's the primary weapon of it. Be careful, it does have a tendency to switch to the lowest range. Quite annoying. For this one it won't matter so much, but if you choose to stand off in combat, then it'll sit there and actually go to the optimum range of that weapon. Well, if you want it to fire torpedoes, which, have different damage at different range, and it's set for like this, then it's going to sit there and go right up next to the enemy. Also, if you're using missile boats and try to stay at range with your weaker ships, if you have it set for like the point defense weapon, it'll sit there and focus on... it'll run up into the point defense range and then fire its missiles. It will fire its missiles as they reload and have target, but you probably don't want your long-range ships to be firing in melee. Down here you can sit and filter different, weapon slots. I've actually never used it. I'm not entirely certain how useful it is. By the way, the armor rating is the total armor, and the structure rating is how much inside the ship can take before it gets damaged. And here's some, basic stats. The Lear, they have very quick acceleration because they don't really accelerate, not the greatest speed, and they turn, 90 degrees a second turning speed. If you hit the weapon test, and you can sit there and go into like a little, tutorial, see how the ship looks, see how it fires, and you can see these armor bars. So, by the way, each section has 4 sets of armor. One on either side, one on top, and one on the bottom. All 3 sections have this in most cases. There are some exceptions, but those are a little more technical. By the way, you can see the armor bars. This one, 3, 6, 9, 10 by 8. Basically, each weapon has a different damage profile. They'll damage to this in a different way. This blue bar, all your cruiser size and higher ships have at least 1 blue bar. Gets up to 4 for, some of the tougher ships. Basically, this reduces all damage coming in by 1 level up until the point that the armor is gone. Once it's gone, that no longer applies, and your ship's going to get lots of damage. By the way, you just sit and click on a target, and it will fire all the weapons it can. You click on one, it'll try to fire all its weapons it can at that target. The Lear really don't fire too well below them, don't fire the greatest above them. By the way, I'm going to set the lasers for point defense. And also another thing, go up top, you can see the range and the arcs of the different weapons. The ship is going to be fighting at about this range, no matter what, or it should fight at that range. By the way, you have the option to fire 5, 10, or 20 missiles. For the most part, what this is for is to sit there and, see how well its point defense does. I can tell you right now, this isn't going to work very well just because there's not that many of that missile.
We are being attacked.
Yes, I know, you're not going to get destroyed. But you see, each missile, deals damage in a certain pattern. What you're going to hear is one, it fire, 2 missiles hit here, and you can see how it hit. Most weapons will sit there until they hit one of these, green bars, and then they'll deal their damage. If I sit there and go with a different loadout, say a bunch of beamers, which beamers, unfortunately, don't do the greatest damage. They are completely accurate, though. Now watch me set for points defense and go back in the weapon test. Now if I fire 20 missiles, zoom out a little bit so you can really see what's going on. As you can see, they don't have the greatest range. However, beamers in lots and lots of values. Apparently, I don't have my settings high enough, but actually they look really cool as I sit there and do a light show. Now I'm going to pause it and get some other, designs in here, and then I'll be back and tell you about them. Alright, and I'm back, just to show you, real quick. I've made a cheap CNC. Basically something I'm going to use for the different, like colonizers, constructors, something that's not going to see combat. It's, loaded up with, the cheapest weapon, ballistics. By the way, ballistics are generally considered cheaper than energy weapons, but they do cost more in supply. By the way, something else, you didn't get to see is the ship cost. That's going to be in, your savings. Construction cost, that's actually going to be how much, industrial output, and then the upkeep, while it's in use and in reserve. Another one you'll see after turn 1 is the prototype cost, which is going to be, about 5 times more expensive. But that's basically all this is. It does have some, missiles, and it is set for the primary, so it'll fire those. Here, an assault shuttle carrier, good for, taking out planets. It does have a camel on it, so it can actually sit there and not, cost too much in terms of supply for the fleet. Repair and salvage allows me to repair ships while outside of my own system. Also allows me to, possibly salvage some techs. Not the greatest chance on its own, but there is a chance it can give me a salvage project, and any tech that I don't have to take a chance at failing is always nice. And then a drone carrier carries little bitty drones. Not the Lear strong suit, but not bad all the same. And then I'm gonna make one more. Gonna make a missile boat. And you can, either click on this to open this up, or click the arrows left and right. And this is going to, be designed to stay in the back and shoot missiles all day long. Now, it does have to have some supply modules, which is going to, raise the price some. And you can actually see the prototype cost here is a little more than 4 times, or about 4 times as much to prototype this. That you only have to build the first time, and prototypes, well, after they see combat, for the first time, they might pick up a design quirk, whether good or bad. But it'll sit here and shoot missiles from range, and that's what I want it to do. I'm just going to hit Submit Design, and then it'll give me a, randomly generated name. Each faction has a set of names they use, and it will cycle, and sometimes might use more, the same one more than once. You can just hit Submit Design again, and it'll just cycle through the different options. A Dark Singer, I kind of like that for a ranged ship, so why not? Just hit OK, and you can change the name to whatever you want. By the way, you can also choose different types here. Right now, at the start, I just have cruisers, drone, and assault shuttles. You will eventually get platforms, battle riders, dreadnoughts, and leviathans. Drones, well, starting out, they generally have just one weapon slot. Not many tech options. They can improve quite a bit later. Assault shuttles, generally don't start with weapons, but they will eventually, these are what you can use to take out planets fairly easily. They do lots of damage to population, not much to the climate hazard or to the climate hazard or to the infrastructure. So basically, you wipe them out, and then you can just colonize, and then all you have to do is terraform, because all the factories and stuff are already there. Well, I think that's going to wrap up the first turn, so I'm going to hit end turn. My fleets are going to go out and do whatever it is they want to do, and there's the countdown. And this shouldn't take too awful long, just because it's the first turn. So they're going to do whatever it is they feel, what I told them to do. And there we go. Now we have some events. The facility received a weapons upgrade. That'd be the naval station. I switched to missiles, so it can actually do something. And that's actually all that happened this turn. Well then, unfortunately for the first part, I generally watch this like a hawk. I try to keep this, at an even 100% growth. It lets my economy rating go up, and that allows me to raise my taxes, which gives me even more money that I can pump into more research. Fortunately, the stimulus does like the jump, and I absolutely hate the stimulus. Well, that's all that happened. Unfortunately, for most factions, the first set of turns is pretty much just going to be in turn. However, I think that's going to be it for this video, and thank you for watching, and have a nice day.